And now, the lovely ladies of Beauxbatons.
Hey everybody, it's the continuing adventures of our willingness to review every single Harry Potter movie in order.
In a word, it is willing.
And this I feel like is the turning point. By the way, I'm Matt Falvey, this is Matthew Owen.
Hi.
Like every time.
Yeah.
Such a big turning point between Goblet and Order of the Phoenix. We're going to be talking about Goblet.
Yeah. This is the big one.
My memory was that this movie sucked. From when I was like a hardcore fan reading them for the first time, I think I remember watching this and going, "Oh, they tried to jam too many things in. It was terrible."
You liked the book, though, right?
The book was good, yeah,
Yeah.
because it had a lot of. It kind of finally took it to another level. I mean,
Yeah.
Prisoner of Azkaban, like number 2 book, it felt like they didn't have much else to do. 3, they had like a pretty cool murder mystery.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
You lacked a lot of the Voldemort, but I liked 3 a lot because it was that rising dread. 4, same thing. Like you're just constantly putting Harry in these situations where you think, "Oh man."
I think it's a good precursor just to note that if for any reason you guys haven't read the books, Goblet of Fire was really the first one where you saw literally the thickness of it. You went into Goblet of Fire knowing that it was going to be much longer and more involved than the rest of them. So it was interesting to see how they went about adapting it to the screen, which we will talk about for sure.
Yeah, I guess just in case somebody's watching this and has never read the book or seen the movie, the whole point about this one is that there's a big tournament, the Triwizard Tournament.
Triwizard.
You have very stereotypical sort of French ladies show up. They're from the all French ladies school.
Yep.
And then you have the sort of like Mongolian, Eastern European, Siberian dudes from the all guys school. They show up. Champions put their name in a cup. Harry's name somehow gets in there. Nobody knows why.
Mystery.
And that's what it's about. So I think this movie, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. But at the same time, there were still so many parts that were so cringeworthy. When they go into this tent at the very beginning, they go to they go to like the Quidditch World Cup or whatever.
Yeah.
And Harry sees a small tent, and all these people go into it, all the Weasleys and everybody, and he goes in and he sees how big the tent is, and
the line, he just looks up and wonder.
Classic Radcliffe. I love
magic.
Oh man.
I think Goblet was really the one where the most pressure was put on Radcliffe to really bring the chops, especially once we get towards the end. By the way, this is not a spoiler-free review. At this point, I'm kind of assuming that you all have read either Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, seen the movie adaptations. So once you get later on, especially when you get the final count or showdown with Voldemort, there was a lot of pressure on Radcliffe.
Yeah.
And I feel like 4 is the most obvious. Goblet of Fire is the most obvious movie adaptation where you saw the actor just on that peak of getting ready to actually become an actor. I think 4, even more so than 3, is the one where you really see the kid actors become real actors. As also the stakes in the movie gets higher, so do the acting performances. Also 4 is when you see a lot more people, extra characters brought on, some great actors. So it's very much bigger and badder than 3. I have a certain affinity for Goblet of Fire, and I feel like it does stem from my love of games. Now, the reason I like Goblet of Fire so much is because shut up. At the center, you have the Triwizard Tournament, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, you got all these different schools coming in. So for the first time in the series, we know there's other schools besides Hogwarts for magical.
And by the way,
wizards.
that was done extremely cheesy. The way the girls came in and did this like choreographed kind of musical Broadway.
And then the doves come out.
And then the guys come in and they're doing gymnastics. Like, none of that felt real. I don't think any of that was in the book. I didn't like that addition. Apparently, there's a deleted scene where Hogwarts' sort of retaliation to that was to sing a stupid song called Hoggy Hoggy Hogwarts.
No, really?
And Dumbledore is putting the lyrics in the air like it's karaoke.
I'm so glad that got left on the cutting room floor.
But anyways, continue, please.
Yeah, so it's all centered around the Triwizard Tournament, like Matt explained at the top. You have 3 different schools. Each of them are supposed to put a name into the goblet. They have to be of age in the wizarding world. That's 17. Harry is not 17 at this point, so they all draw the names. And kind of, there's no other way it could have been done. In the book, it felt more organic, but kind of in the film, the girls make their way, and immediately there's one person they're focusing on, Fleur Delacour. When you see the guys' school come in, Victor Crumb is like the main dude.
Who's
we
also
know
the best Quidditch player in the world.
exactly. We
But
know
he's a
he
kid.
is. Yeah, he's like 18, 19, and he goes to school, but he's the best in the world at Quidditch. He's the best seeker ever. But since we see him in the beginning, we know that he's kind of the Harry Potter of that school, one could say.
Yeah.
So we also get the introduction of Cedric Diggory, who is played by Robert Pattinson, known for his Twilight series. And then all of a sudden, Harry Potter.
I
his
thought
name
he
comes
was
up.
great casting because he looks.
Oh, yeah.
He looks like a better looking version of Daniel
Of
Radcliffe.
Harry. Oh yeah, no, for sure. He's like everything that Harry wanted to be in those first 3 years, but had too much evil stuff trying to attack him, so he could become that.
Yeah.
So then essentially you have these 3 tasks that the kids have to take on, and in between those tasks they're given clues, or in this case almost every single time the teachers or someone near them just kind of spoils the surprise. But the reason I like Goblet of Fire so much is because it is a tournament. It is a set of challenges, and when you use that as a format, what you always see is variety. You're going to see something that tests their strength, their intellect, their willpower, etc. That's just the way that challenges work in a narrative structure. So the thing I like the most, and I'm sure I've shared this sentiment before, the thing I like the most about the Harry Potter universe is the fact that there's these different facets of magic that, are in the background. So the gnomes control the banks, there's giant dragons, all this crazy stuff, people living under the lake, all these mysterious things. And Goblet of Fire is really the one that centers on it. But where I think it breaks up is in the pacing. And Matt, I'm sure you have quite a bit to say. I'll start a teeny bit.
Sure.
For example, the whole entire film feels very rushed. Like Matt said in the beginning, they're going to this Quidditch World Cup. You see them take this magical boot that transports them to the place where it's being held. You see them get their grounds, their tents. They even have enough time to have a stint with Lucius Malfoy and Draco Malfoy, the antagonists, the bullies to Harry. And then you see the teams come in. It looks all cool. And then hard cut to after the Quidditch match.
Yeah.
So in a way, although that's the most glaring instance of just something completely cut and we don't get to see, I feel like a lot of Goblet of Fire is simply hopping from point to point to point and filling in the stuff in the middle, but you kind of lose the heart. What did you feel? Because I feel like this Goblet of Fire or this Harry Potter has the most diversity in different magics and themes and stuff like that. How do you think they wrapped it up in the movie itself? Because it's a lengthy
I felt
movie
like
too.
I was taking a portkey from scene to scene. This is definitely one of the biggest, like you said, the biggest example of trying to fit in too much. And when we get to Order of the Phoenix, we'll see a movie that was a lot better at cherry picking. And because the difference between a book and a film is a book can take you months or weeks to read. You can ruminate on things. You can have one passage take days of reading time. You can put in all this crap. But in a movie, you have no time. It's the shortest medium of all.
Screen time matters. Screen time matters in films.
Every
in
minute.
Books, yeah.
And everything needs to be setting something up. I mean, I like that they put in the part of them taking the portkey to the Quidditch Cup because the portkey came into play a lot later and it actually made sense. Otherwise, this would have been a big surprise. But yeah, this thing was just all over the place, jumping from spot to spot. It was so cheesy. But I understand they wanted to get to the school fast because they had a lot to do at the school. I think this is the fastest one they ever actually get right to the school and get down to business, at least out of the first 4. Because in 1, 2, and 3, we saw a much longer setup and more of Harry's life. But this was like just go, go, go.
I think each one at least has a 20 or 25 minute preamble, or not prologue per se, but always Harry either at the Dursleys or, some silly escapade. In this one, you essentially have the Quidditch World Cup, which really, the whole entire purpose of that entire sequence is so they can have the calamity that happens in the end. So the Quidditch World Cup is over. Voldemort or somebody, one of his cronies, they attack, and then you see the Dark Mark, which is the sign that Voldemort, the Dark Wizard, is returning. So that really sets up the ominous part. What I liked about this movie the most is that the earlier movies, they were children's movies primarily. Chamber of Secrets got dark, okay? And there was a sense of palpable tension. 3 was more of a murder mystery, like you said, so there was some dark elements there. But what I think 4 did the best is 4 really kind of made it seem like this stuff is dangerous. Now, in the book, they made it much, much more. I guess I could say in the movie, you never really doubt that someone could die. You never think like, oh, maybe someone actually is going to die or something tragic could happen. In the movie,
Right.
It never really comes off like that. In the book, it is. But what I liked about Goblet of Fire the most is, see, you like the classes. You like the hanging about. I like the action, but only when it's not. I don't like the wizard duels with the wands and stuff like that. It's cool, but I would rather see things like going under this giant lake and meeting all these different people. And then when you have these high stakes, like in the second. Actually, I think the best way to go about this is, since the movie kind of does it in a 1, 2, 3 finale act.
Yeah.
How about we just go about it that way? What did you think about from the Quidditch Cup leading up to the first big Triwizard Tournament challenge? Well, what did you think about that beginning section with the dragons and the introduction? They get to school very fast, but they don't really rest on the fact that they're in school. Once they're in school, it's very quickly to the goblet thing. It feels like just as quickly as the Hogwarts students
I don't
arrive.
think I even have a firm grasp on what that opening section was, because there was no sense of continuity at all. It was just like scene. And
Yeah.
when I was watching it, I was thinking, what is it about this that feels so odd? And I realized that when the kids are talking, their lines, they don't have conversations. They
No.
talk to each other and they say 5 lines from a book, and then someone else says 5 lines from a book.
Yes.
And then you have Emma Watson, who
I was just going to bring her up, too.
whose acting style at this time was do every line like you're on the verge of a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And the lines are like, what the hell are you talking about? Why
It's almost like everything is a quip. I think I actually said this in a previous one, or alluded to it. There's a specific scene in which the brothers George and Fred Weasley, Ron's brothers, and
they're the worst for bringing in the they always give these awkward book lines to the twins.
Yes.
And it gets dropped in and it makes no sense with anything that was said before and after.
I think 4 is really the one where they tried to boost up the whole twin mentality. You know this, as soon as they come into the Quidditch World Cup, they're saying like, oh, look at this tent. And they both in unison say something like, isn't magic great? And they always say things in unison. And I think Goblet of Fire was really the one that pushed that. And Goblet of Fire also really pushed, like you said, Hermione in a weird way. So when Fred and George are trying to put their names into the cups, but they're underage, they're doing all these weird tricks to try and fool this age line that's around the goblet.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's one-word quips. So Hermione's just sitting there on these benches reading her book or whatever. And
that's when everyone else freaks out, and then she sits down and reads a book like she's in a library or something.
Yeah. So they're getting all ready to take this age potion. Everyone's freaking out. She's sitting there reading a book, and they're like, all right, Hermione, here we go. They take their thing. And just in the most out of character, it really didn't feel like Hermione's or her acting at all. Emma Watson's acting didn't go down this path, but she delivers this super like snotty-nosed, almost fake-sounding, it'll never work, like this very songy.
Yeah.
And that stuff happens so often with Hermione that at a certain point I was like, Hermione is annoying. She's not helpful. And in the book, she's like that, but in the film, she's not. It felt like this was the film where they tried to make it as much as the book as possible, but lost all of the sense of the book.
Absolutely.
So I think, like you said, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm just getting shot to scene from scene to scene. But the issue is some of these scenes are really cool. Like I really like the dragon challenge in the first one because they don't show you, but they talk about how the different wizards went about trying to overcome their dragon. And I thought the action itself, although the CGI was okay at times, the whole thing where the dragon eventually breaks off the chain and Harry's flying around the school, it all felt very epic and very good. But the rest of the film is kind of just like, it's almost shuffled together. It's like these challenges are the high points of the film, and everything else is just kind of briskly moving the plot along while subtly reminding you there's evil things afoot. We get a new introduction, someone I wanted to talk about very specifically because I like the character a lot, Mad-Eye Moody.
Yeah,
what did you
that's
think
right.
about him?
I thought he was greatly cast. Like most of the adults in the film, they have the cream of the crop that really do British London or England's version of Hollywood proud. Because
Yes.
these people come in, and maybe it's just because we're so used to watching Radcliffe and Watson and whoever plays the twins. But when these powerhouses step in, it's such a huge lift. I think that they handled his subplot a lot better than they did, say, the Ginny subplot of being controlled.
Yep.
In the last one, they always had him drinking out of a flask. And then much later on, they had Snape accuse Harry of stealing the Polyjuice potion.
They're dropping hints, whereas in Chamber of Secrets it felt very sudden and not really alluded to. But in this one, they did that whole reveal very well.
Yeah,
I also liked his character design too. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh yeah, no, his character design looked good. The eye was just on the side of looking a bit ridiculous, but I think that it fit pretty well. Yeah, he was done pretty well. And then once they I think they made it a little too obvious with the tongue flick, but
yes,
that was after the seeds had already been planted for a long time, and it was later on, and I felt like that was okay. They even had Myrtle sort of drop a hint in between trying to look at Harry's dick.
Yeah,
she was talking about somebody taking Polyjuice, and it was just such a little throwaway line that when you know what to listen for, it makes a lot of sense. But at the time, it didn't. I didn't think that was too much of a clue.
Speaking of ghosts trying to fondle Harry, that leads us right into the second challenge. So after they do the dragon challenge, they're given this egg, and in the book, the parts between the challenges are almost like a little mystery within themselves. They have to figure out what these clues mean, because if they don't figure out what the clue means, they're going to be severely underhanded when they're coming up with these challenges. So the next challenge features an egg. After Harry has won something, I forget what the scene is exactly, he holds the egg up, they all open it, and it screams super loud, and then he has to figure out that, I think Cedric tells him if you go take a bath in the special bathroom, you get to maybe get a clue. And this was this really, I actually, besides the weirdly creepy sexuality from the ghost who likes to rub up against Harry as he's naked taking a bubble bath, I really enjoyed that scene because it shows off the grandiosity, if that's even a word, of Hogwarts. You have this bathroom that is literally for like 16-year-old, top of their classes. You got like 18 knobs with 40 different flavors of bubbles. You got like a half-naked mermaid who's like winking at you and stuff. And I feel like in that way, Goblet of Fire was really good about making things look cool, making it really like look grandiose, but you lose the emotion. And the second act specifically, with the second challenge, I feel like that is the most obvious point of both positive and negative, because the scene in which Harry has to go under the lake and rescue somebody, which is what the second challenge is actually pretty good. In between, there's some little issues. But the thing leading up to it, where he figures out the egg, where he stumbles upon very quickly how to breathe underwater for an hour, these things were much more well done in the book. And the way that they did it in the movie really feels like there was scenes they had planned out, but they had to cut it. Because it's just like Neville saying, "Here, if you eat this weed, it'll make you breathe for an hour."
Where they teleport over to a scene of Harry and Neville by the water. You don't know how they got there, why they would be there. Neville brings it up. Although that was a nice, because leading in, you eventually find out that Moody had planted all of that.
Yes.
And it did make sense when he had stated, he's like, "Oh, that stupid Neville I gave him the book," and all this stuff. And I thought that was pretty well done. But I mean, that really has nothing to do with the movie. That's all J.K. Rowling's writing. But you're absolutely right. It was just scene. It was like trying to put all of these pieces together. It was like making a movie backwards, because they wanted to make it from the book instead of just choosing something to focus on. Yeah. And I don't know if you could have trimmed it down more, because there was so much that they needed to get through.
Well, yeah, the biggest thing, if anyone's read the book, one of the biggest omissions was Hermione's her whole entire thing about freeing the house elves. House elves are barely, I don't even think they're, besides Dobby.
I think because Dobby was supposed to be in the kitchen in this book. In the actual
book,
Hogwarts kitchen. They don't even talk about them.
They have tons and tons of house elves, and Hermione has this crusade to free the house elves, and that whole entire part was cut, and that's a decent chunk of the book. So when you're cutting these big pieces, like we said, it's a huge book, but some of the questionable changes to the way that the challenges and the overall pacing was designed, it brought up some questions, specifically on the third one. Did you have anything more you wanted to say about that middle portion?
No, let's keep going. Let's jump around.
the ending, what leads into the ending is it's a giant maze. Okay. At this point, you have all the kids, and there's a big maze. It's a hedge maze, and they
And
say,
where is this maze? Where
Okay,
are these mountains coming from?
that's my biggest issue because in the book it is done in the They changed the Quidditch pitch
Yeah.
into a magical hedge maze where all the kids can sit up there and they can see everything, but the people inside cannot. Okay. In this one, it's kind of like a maze that just goes into question mark land that I didn't know Hogwarts had. And then within that, the whole idea of it in the movie is there's no beasts, there's no nothing in this. It's just you and your mind. Okay. And that's really cool. But it sucks because it misses some of the coolest little pieces that are in the book. In the book version, it's not just your mind. It's not you against the other people and trying to solve a maze. In the book, and I hate to bring up comparisons to the book to the movie, but when you're looking at source material, there is a riddle in which a giant sphinx monster is blocking a path. That's a really cool part that brings in this really weird exotic magic that never gets brought up again. There's a whole section in which a mist causes a perspective change while Harry is fighting somebody. A lot of really, really cool things that could have added to the tension. And I feel like the hedge maze section itself only existed so we had enough time to see Fleur, the girls' school champion.
Fleur hit the floor.
Yeah, to see Victor go all evil, Victor Crumb, that guy go all evil, and to eventually have this weird showdown between Cedric and Harry. The way that they constructed that whole entire sequence felt a little bit out of line because in the end it was almost like Cedric and Harry were fighting each other to get to the cup and win. But in the book and the way the whole entire rest of the story works out, they're kind of like in this together. They feel the danger of the actual challenge, and that's what unites them. And they've both been helping each other out. Everything felt so abrasive, aggressive, and everyone was fighting against each other towards the end that it kind of lessened the eventual ending sequence, which since I've been spearheading all of this, I'll let you take this ending sequence. At least in the book, I felt like I cared about Cedric at a base value. In the movie, he was a pretty face and he helped Harry every now and again, but he wasn't that great. So then when the ending happens, it kind of lost its luster. But I thought it was also done well because it got very, very dark. Matt, what's the ending to this movie? What's the big reveal? Because it gets violent as all hell towards the end there.
The ending is one of the best parts.
Yes, for sure.
When they think that they've won and they grab that trophy together, because they sort of stop their little stupid sibling rivalry, shoving each other, and they're like, let's grab it together at the same time.
Let's go.
And they awaken in this new place, and Voldemort's little Wormtail's there, and he captures the boys, and he finishes off the ceremony, taking Harry's blood, and one of the coolest villain reveals I think I've probably ever seen.
Yeah, it is so cool.
Because Voldemort up to that point has been shown in flashbacks like they don't even let you know what he is, but you have a feeling he's this little fetus with an arm that can talk.
Yeah, everything you see up until then, you see like the movie opens with a little bit of like a flashback, and he's just like this little festering, and everything you've always seen of him is the back of somebody else's head, or you you don't see him until this point, and then the way they did it, plus with the casting choice of I'm gonna murder his name, Ralph Fiennes, I believe. Oh,
I've heard people say Ray Fiennes.
I think it is Fiennes. I don't know. It's like Fiennes, so I'm not wrong for butchering it.
How about let's say the actor who must not be named?
Yeah, he who must not be named.
But when they finally reveal this, they did a great job of keeping it pretty hidden, keeping it very sinister. Lots of great flashbacks with Harry and violence and these dream sequences, and then the way he sort of like grows into sort of like almost an alien xenophobe type creature. Yeah. And then when it kind of like, when he finally appears and just like zooms in, I thought it was fucking amazing.
Yeah, there is a very, very good use of sound there because essentially what happens, Wormtail does a ceremony around a cauldron after taking the little pieces from Harry, and then he drops a fetus, literally just like a fetus, into the cauldron. Yeah, cuts off his own hand. All right, and this is PG-13. We're jumping from the third book, which was pretty rough PG, but still PG, to just this guy casually cutting off his own hand, forcibly cutting Harry's arm open, stealing his blood, and then they drop this fetus who comes out, and like you said, in a weird amorphous blob, kind of forms into this spectral man in which a cloak appears over him, and then everything just kind of, the sound goes super quiet, and you get that perfect vision of him opening his eyes, and you just see the cat eyes kind of slit.
First, he's like more of a snake, and then he kind of like runs his hands over his head, and then boom, just appears. I thought that was like, I'm getting chills just thinking about that.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm like, I have goosebumps. The hair is standing up. It's an excellent reveal, and that's why I have such an issue with Goblet of Fire, and I'm sure you can agree with me on this, is that it's inconsistently both great and utter shit. Yeah. I think and both to that, because Voldemort, he appears, and then him and Harry have a little duel, which is cool because you get to see their wands connect, and they're both forcefully pushing.
I love when he's just like shoving Harry back and picking on him, but Voldemort wants to prove to everybody, like, I still got it. Yes. I know everyone, because, he probably thinks that maybe some of his followers have an inkling of truth believing about this kid that he couldn't kill the first time, right? But I love when Harry decides, I'm not going to run anymore, and he just stands up and he walks out and he goes for the duel. I thought that was a pretty cool moment. And then, what did you think of the duel? Because there wasn't a lot of movement. It was just two people pointing their sticks at each other, two things of light and energy hitting each other. I thought it was fine. I thought it was more like, it was like Obi-Wan versus Vader in A New Hope. It was more symbolic. It didn't need to be flashy.
What I like the most about this duel is that it shows really, truly how dirty the duels could get with what we've been given. You've seen duels in the previous films, but they're, like we saw, I think it was Chamber of Secrets. It's always, very chivalrous, very polite. You're doing it for sport, disarming charms. When Voldemort comes out, he comes out, and that's why I really like also when Harry accepts his fate, so to speak, and moves forward, because at this point, not only has Voldemort murdered Cedric Diggory in cold blood, as soon as that kid pops up and you see Voldemort's coming back, he uses the killing curse immediately, killing off a kid. Well, let's not undermine it. Even though Robert Pattinson was like 21 at time of filming, or early 20s, maybe 19, they kill a child character. And then immediately once he gains his power, he goes, okay, Harry, let's duel. Harry knows shit. He knows like maybe Expelliarmus. Immediately, Voldemort uses another unforgivable curse and uses the Crucio curse, which is literal torture across your body. So we know immediately this is high stakes. And then, they do the little back and forth. But when that whole entire stream of light and like the green versus the red, that's when you really get this kind of, wow, like there's more than just flinging things of light at each other. Yeah. Ghosts start to come out and all that crazy stuff, and it's really it's a grand duel. It really feels like there's stakes, and like I said, a lot of the movie, it doesn't feel like at any point you're like, oh, things could go wrong. But when you see somebody cut off their own hand, bring a man back to life who immediately starts torturing and murdering children, you're like, oh, things have changed. And then when they finally get back, another thing before we get to the end of the movie, what I like to bring up is when he finally, Voldemort comes to power, you see all his followers pop down. And what I liked is, even though they didn't allude to it as much in the film, he says he kind of uses magic to pull all their masks off, and he says Avery, Crabbe, Goyle, Malfoy. So it's a weird way of you get that final satisfaction of, yeah, you know what, Lucius Malfoy and them, they were bad all along. Crabbe, Goyle, all the Slytherins, they were bad. But it's
not that
almost
there was
like
any doubt.
Exactly, because you expect it the entire time. But it's good to finally get that kind of confirmation, and then also to see Lucius Malfoy, who has been the biggest badass, or at least he thinks he is the entire time, to be absolutely quivering. So to see a powerful character put almost to, like, not tears, but shivering and trembling in fear against this guy we just met, it really they did a great job setting the stage for Voldemort. I think what really makes it fall apart is when they finally touch the portkey and go back. I think
that part is super dark too, because they go back and there's this dead kid and they're all cheering, and then all of a sudden a girl screams. It's like, this is I applaud the studio that they had the balls to go this dark with a franchise that had made them hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And
Yeah.
they said, "Nah, fuck it. Let's kill kids and show it to other kids."
Well, and that's the thing is I think and much like the first challenge, this ending is a perfect example of both amazing design choices and amazing theming and both shit acting and weird dialogue choices. So like you said, they come hurtling up to where all the students are. Harry bawling as much as Daniel Radcliffe can. Dead Cedric falls. Everyone's clapping. It's super ominous, and that part always gives me chills. I love watching this part, not because it's so morbid, but because it's such a juxtaposition of happiness, and they have no clue what's happened.
Yeah.
And it resonates so well. It really gets under your skin. And then here comes Cedric Diggory's dad, who realizes, and I'm sorry to do it because it does just take one line of dialogue, but the guy sees his dead son, starts to weep, and that would have been a great place to cut it. Instead, he sits back and bellows like the guy from the Legend of Zelda cartoon, "My boy! Oh, my boy!" And both my girlfriend and I just start laughing. And I feel like such a piece of shit for laughing over a dead kid. But when you have a man who is like bawling and go, "My boy!" It just seems so cartoonish.
It was like Will Ferrell at in the Old School funeral.
Yes, it very much was. And it's like, it was such a perfect moment. And I feel like they tried to sell it too much, and it just kind of fell flat. But then the ending with the reveal of Mad Eye, I thought, brought it back up a little bit too.
Yeah, it did. I mean, Radcliffe saying that, like, "I didn't tell you about a graveyard" was another airlifted line from the book. I like the transformation from him into Crouch. I thought looked pretty good.
Thought it was creepy for sure.
Yeah, that looked really well. There's a lot. Another. Speaking of horrible lines.
Continue. Let's just go all day.
When Michael Gambon is telling everyone about Cedric Diggory dying, he's like, "Yeah, we had a really terrible loss," and he says it so sarcastically,
like he doesn't even care.
It's just, and his accent is all over the place because I think he's like, I don't think he does his R's in that sort of regal British way, but he was trying to sound like an old regal Britishman, but it comes back and forth. He should just be himself. Stop imitating. You can't do the accent.
I think moment to moment, this film has the capacity to both wonder and awe you.
Yeah.
But also at the flip of a coin, at the drop of a dime, you will be just as furious. Whether you're a newcomer to just the movie series and you follow that, or you've read the books and you're a fan faithfully, I think this film both invigorates and pisses people off more than anything else because it sticks to the book so much to its detriment that it's almost like everybody was complaining about how much they didn't stick to the book, and then the one time they do, it's all garbled. You get so many new characters, so many different kinds of variations of magic, and nothing is really explained as much as possible. And I agree with you, Matt. I don't think there was a really, unless they wanted to cut it into two movies, which at this point was unheard of. Harry Potter was really the one that brought up this whole two-part finale, but splitting a movie into two parts, I think that's the only way they could have made Goblet of Fire truly as good as we wanted to. But on the whole, I think it comes off on top because it has the balls to get as violent and dirty and dark as it needs to, but it just doesn't do as good of a job of setting up the characters and making you feel at home. It feels like a roller coaster through a Hogwarts world. It doesn't feel like you're very much at Hogwarts.
Yeah, it's the problem is when you try to have everybody in a movie, then Victor Crumb gets 2 lines. Then Cedric Diggory is barely in it, and we're supposed to care when he dies.
Yeah.
And it's just, and Fleur, like, I don't feel like I know anything about any of these characters at all, but they're supposed to be, it just doesn't feel important at all. There's a line right at the end where Hermione looks, again, like she's about to have a breakdown, and she starts going through, like, all these emotions. You know, at the end of The Force Awakens, where Mark Hamill is only on screen for like 20 seconds. So he
the staring match?
Yeah, so he tries to like act the hell out of those 20 seconds. Like he's trying to tell you his whole backstory. Because
in his eyes. His eyes. He's just trying to really get, I'm the Luke Skywalker.
So then at the end of this, Watson goes like from smiling to like manic to sad and starts trembling, and then she looks at them and she says, "Everything's gonna change now, isn't it?"
Yeah, and I think that line itself was actually pretty decent, but the delivery and just like you said, the weird
Was
kind
psychotic. And then
yeah.
Radcliffe walks up. She's about to freak out. And he walks up so nonchalantly, just goes, "Yep." Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's such a bittersweet end, and I feel like Goblet of Fire is really it's a movie that needs to have the book accompany it. I think if you've read the book and you watch the movie, your brain will just fill in those spaces. Unfortunately, I saw this movie and I've seen it every single time I've seen this movie. I had read the book or listened to the audiobook version just previously, so I don't really have that lack of information. But I feel like this movie is so inconsistent that it's super hard to rate. I want to give it something like a 3.5 because it has some of the best Harry Potter moments that are so far in the series. But on a whole, the film does not maintain a decent pacing, and it feels like all sorts of crazy. I don't know where to put this one, to be honest, Matt. What are you feeling?
I'm going to give it...
I feel like we've been
I would give it a 3 because for most of the movie, I thought I'm enjoying a lot of this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good moments. The Voldemort reveal was badass. I rewatched just that scene like tons of times. I just loved the way he came out. And then there were a lot of cringy moments. Like there's no way in heck it's getting above a 3, but I think it's better than a 2 because I would recommend this to people that had read the books and were wondering if there were any movies to skip. I would say that this for better or worse, this felt the most like a book.
Yeah, no, it did very much so. I think I agree with you. I'm gonna go a teeny bit higher and say 3.5 because I have an affinity for the darker stuff, and that Voldemort reveal that kicked me into high gear. We've been doing this. I think right now the ranking of the movies goes Prisoner of Azkaban, Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, I would put this above all of them.
Yeah, you know what? Oh, it's so hard to pick between Azkaban and Goblet because they're both so good in their own ways.
But the middle of Azkaban is awful.
Falls off.
It's awful.
Yeah, you know what? You're completely right. Goblet of Fire, at least for better or worse, can entertain you every 10 minutes, whereas there's just a big chunk of Prisoner of Azkaban that dull. It just slows to a crawl. So yeah, I think right now it's 4-3-1-2.
That's right.
Which is decent.
Oh, it is what it is. This franchise is insane. This had a brand new composer too. We didn't even talk about that.
Oh yeah, no. Let's talk a little bit about the music because visually this is the one where they really upped the budget. Visually, everything looks great. The set design is great.
The set design is very, very strong.
Everything is just all you have to see is those cool 3 pillars in the lake and those shots. Yeah. Cinematically, this movie is probably the best next to Prisoner of Azkaban because I really like how they did that. Mm-hmm. But musically, it's very different.
It's a lot different. Very different. It's a lot a bit more generic. But I think that it actually suited it pretty well.
Yeah, because there's so much stuff going on visually and story-wise that you don't need a booming score to make it even more overwhelming.
You don't. I think sometimes John Williams is so good he can kind of take over, and he can kind of make your mind race. And I think that this needed to be a bit more grounded and a bit more dread. So the score is good, and actually, I'm glad I mentioned the score for you to bring up the set design because that's something we didn't talk about, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that was really strong. But all right, well, anybody out there watching, listening, feel free to comment and tell us what you would give it out of
let us know
whatever rating you want and how you would order them so far. Tune in for next week. We're going to be talking about
Order of the Phoenix, boy.
That's right. You can find our stuff on a90skid.com. You can find me on Twitter at GameThinkTalk.
You can find me on Twitter at SuperGamecast64 or at SGC64Matt, also on a90skid.com.
Okay, everybody. Bye for now.
The Dark Lord shall rise again. Is it Voldemort?